Police Department for both being here today. Can we give them a round of applause? We do have, by the way, you probably saw the bathrooms are out into the left and exits out that way and on either side. Excuse me. Let's see. I'd like to introduce some of our elected officials, starting with Mayor Lily May, who is here. And from Ohlone College trustee Greg Bonacorse. Diane Shaw from AC Transit Board. Diane Jones, Fremont Unified District trustee. Lori Rannick from Mission College. Ben Yee, president of the California Cities Planning Commission. Yeah, let's see, we have, Council Member Raj Salwan for this district. Also, Council Member Teresa Cox. And finally, last but not least, Kathy Kimberlane from Supervisor Howlett's office. Did I miss anybody? Okay, thank you very much. We're first going to recognize the fact that it is National Community College Month. And it's very fitting that we're here at Ohlone College and the Congressman is going to present some certificates and then give opening remarks about what's going on. So first off, here's Congressman Khanna.
And appreciate folks being here. We want to first recognize 3 community colleges. Of course, our host first, Ohlone College, that serves Fremont, Newark, and Union City. And accepting this award will be Ohlone College President Charles Sasaki. And then we have Diya College. Diya has a strong history of supporting transfer programs. I don't know who accepted.
We don't have, they couldn't make it.
Okay, but
we do have a certificate.
And Mission College, which has served, of course, for 40 years our community, and accepting as Vice President of Instruction, Lori Rannick. Lori.
Good evening, I'm Charles Sasaki, President and Superintendent of Ohlone College. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. I've been in the district now for 9 whole months, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to our campus. We're just so pleased to have this opportunity to be recognized for Community College Month as partners in this work to advance diversity, excellence, and opportunity. And thank you to Congressman for your advocacy and for your support.
Thank you.
My name is Lori Rannick. I am the Vice President of Instruction at Mission College. We're so thrilled to be here tonight with you all. Community College Month is such a special time. It really honors the work of some of the hardest working folks in serving our most disproportionately impacted populations, and all the teaching and learning that happens in each of our valued institutions. Thank you, Congressman Khanna, for this award and for this honor. And we just really hope that you continue to support us, continue to support the vision of community colleges across the country. Thank you.
Do you have any of those? Let me just say what the
Yeah, I'm done, I'll just do the, you want me to do the Q&A? Okay, okay. Yeah, 30 seconds, there you go. You can tell you how it's done. Okay, what we're gonna do, the Congressman's gonna make some opening remarks, and then we're gonna have Q&A. The way that this is gonna go is we have 3 staff members. We have Tip, we have, I can't see, but Chris and Yvonne are out there somewhere. There. If you have questions, get their attention. And they will write, give them your first name, the city you're from, question topic, they'll write it down. We're going to go around the room the best we can, balance it. The reason we ask topics is so we can try to balance it out. We don't have 15 environmental questions in a row. If you are selected, let the staffer hold the microphone, ask a question, please don't give a speech, or ask a bunch of follow-up questions. The goal is to let everyone raise the issues and questions that they want. This is a free forum. But first,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it, and always good to be here in Fremont. Good to see our mayor, Lily Mayer, and Vice Mayor Rod Sullivan, and Teresa Cox, and all of our wonderful elected officials. And particularly appreciate being in Fremont, where I live and have lived for now many years, and so it's always good to do this here. We had a busy week, as probably all of you know, in Congress. Finally got some things done. It was a yes vote on the Ukraine aid package, as was every Democrat. Needed aid to Ukraine, which I think is so important to stand up to Putin, and this president has, in my view, really, with Tony Blinken, done a very good job of getting our allies and standing up for freedom and territorial integrity in Ukraine. I was also a yes vote, as was every Democrat, on the aid to Taiwan. I was a no vote on the offensive weapons to Israel. And, I supported aid to Israel in my time in Congress for 8 years, every time. But I thought, given the current situation, to be sending offensive weapons, bombs, and missiles to Netanyahu while he's going into Rafah, and meaning more women and children are going to die, is not something that was consistent with my values or what I was hearing from this district. So, it was a controversial vote. There were only 37 Democrats who voted no on it, but for me it was important that we not give a blank check to Netanyahu, and that we have a permanent ceasefire in the region and release of the hostages. And I don't think having offensive weapons is going to contribute to it. I was on this week on ABC yesterday explaining the vote in 6 minutes. If anyone wants to see the segment, I'm sure if people have questions about it, I'm happy to answer them. So those were the key sort of votes last week, and I'm home this week. So it's abbreviated because the president wants me to go out to Wisconsin to talk to campuses. He can't go on campuses, so he sends me. So I have to be in Wisconsin for a couple of days. But otherwise, looking forward to being home, getting my favorite restaurant. People sometimes see me at Pakwan, Shalimar, Mongoli. So we'll be going out later tonight for a meal. But let's get the question and answer started.
Yep, are you ready to roll?
Yeah.
Congressman, we have Samuel from Fremont on Iran.
Thank you, Congressman. So I'm a lifelong Democrat here, Iranian American, and I have been disappointed with my party in terms of its stance, in terms of Iran-related legislation, specifically holding the Islamic Republic accountable. So my question is, what are your thoughts in terms of Iran foreign policy? And I just want to add a little background to that. So the the Islamic Republic is the root of all suffering in the Middle East. It's not only exporting its terror, it's not only harming the Iranian people, it's also exporting its dangerous ideology to the region and with plans to expand to the world. I think we need maximum support for the Iranian people, and that could be policies like a workers' strike fund that Congress could figure out a way to use Iran's frozen assets to be able to provide that money somehow to the Iranian people to be able to topple the regime, as well as maximum pressure on the regime. This is really important to my community. My goal is to be the voice of the people, and my goal is to see peace and security in the region, and that's everyone, including the Palestinian people, Israeli people, and everyone in the region. So what are your thoughts in terms of the Democratic Party's foreign policy with Iran and how it's been going?
I appreciate the question. I have condemned, of course, Iran's attack on Israel. I don't think they should have been into Israel's sovereign territory and voted with 400 other members or so to condemn that. I have called for sanctions on individual people in the regime who have engaged in human rights violations, and also the violations of many women in Iran, and seeing the repression of human rights. But I don't believe that this was the problem of Democrats. I think that Jim Mattis told Donald Trump, do not rip up the JCPOA. President Obama recognized that to get peace in the Middle East, it's going to take a diplomatic infrastructure like Europe, where you have Iran, Saudi Arabia, Israel, with a Palestinian state, Egypt, and other actors. And Trump got into office and basically wanted to undo everything Obama did, and at the disregarded Mattis's advice, disregarded his foreign policy advice, ripped up the JCPOA, and that led to a relationship with Iran where we had no dialogue, no diplomacy. Hardliners in Iran prevailed, and now they're much closer to the nuclear bomb than had we stayed in with that approach. And the maximum pressure campaign that Trump tried didn't work. By definition didn't work, because Iran is closer to the nuclear bomb and is far more aggressive now than they were with Obama's approach. So my belief is that the only way that we can have peace is to work again towards having a diplomatic security arrangement in the Middle East that has Saudi Arabia, Iran, Israel, and Egypt with a Palestinian state. And until then, you're never going to have peace. But we can do that while recognizing the need for standing with the Iranian people and human rights.
What's up, bro? I'm with Colin from Sunnyvale, and he has a question on the 14th Amendment.
Thank you for taking my question. My question is, I'm also a lifelong Democrat, and I'm wondering, are we all supposed to pretend that the 14th Amendment does not exist? The Constitution is no longer a thing? And as a related note, there's a real growing sense of dread that my own party is intentionally throwing an election. And I just want to know, like, is there doing at Capitol Hill, is there any awareness of that, or not really? Thank you.
Well, certainly, I'll tell you, people on Democrats on the Hill are not for throwing the election. We're trying. It's a hard-fought election. We can't really talk about politics. I'm happy to talk about politics outside, but I will say that, I believe that the former president needs to be held accountable under the law, and that the court cases should be adjudicated before the election, so that the American people know in terms of the plans to overthrow the election, or in terms of the plans on classified documents. Unfortunately, it looks like that may not be the case. I, as a politician, don't think it's for me to be pronouncing on the legal decisions. The Supreme Court unanimously upheld the former president's right to be on the ballot, and I think their view was that the 14th Amendment, you have to have a judicial adjudication, a congressional adjudication of insurrection that hasn't existed yet. And so, we need the legal process to play out, but the main thing is that the American people have to be mobilized to make a choice. And while I can't say in a town hall who to vote for, I do hope that everyone will vote and recognize the stakes of the election.
Hi, Congressman. I have Wanda from Fremont who has a question on regulation for AI.
Good evening, Congressman. As you know, we're in the middle of Silicon Valley, and we weren't really anticipating all the regulation required, say, with social media and everything else, especially with children and teens. And we do have a bit of an issue, especially with the younger ones. So I just wonder, as we go forward, what are the regulations that Congress is looking at for AI and anything to do with trying to help the teenagers that are suffering from just sort of parents doing their best for probably the last 10 years to try to get on top of it, but really there's just not much you can do in a way, except for not going to follow.
Well, I want to thank you for saying that, and as a parent, I sympathize, and I agree with your point that very hard with social media in terms of the challenges it causes. Sometimes I describe it as, for young people, as your worst experience in junior high on steroids. And we know that for teenage girls in particular, it has caused issues of suicide, suicidal thoughts, depression, eating disorders. There has to be regulation. I've been calling for this since I've been in Congress, since 2017, that there has to be a standard where you can't have social media doing harm to a minor or someone under 18. You can have free speech, but that doesn't mean that you can have algorithms that are addictive or pushing harmful content in terms of mental health to young people. And there have to be standards about what age people can get onto these platforms and enforcement if people younger than 13 are getting onto the platform. So it's been a dereliction, frankly, of Congress that we haven't been able to pass anything. I'm hopeful. It's one of the few bipartisan areas that we can have standards to protect the young people from the harms of social media. And more broadly, we need to be focused on the mental health and well-being of our young folks. It's concerning to me how many young people I talk to who bring up stress, mental health, wellness as concerns, and we need to do a better job of providing those resources for young folks. So I appreciate your question. We can discuss AI more broadly. There's so many things we need to do on that, but most urgently we need to identify content that is AI generated so people know it's AI as opposed to a real human voice. But on kids, that's, I think, the most urgent issue, and as a parent, I feel that acutely.
Congressman, we have Edward from Fremont on human rights resolution in Gaza.
I would like to see if perhaps we could create a resolution to examine the human rights violations in Gaza. Perhaps an investigation, international in origin, where we participate, and perhaps offer protection for that, for the investigators in that region. I'm a little disturbed to see that medical supplies and medical facilities are being attacked, and I'd like to see that handled.
I appreciate that. Before I answer the question, I won't put all of you on the spot in that you're not in elective office, you don't have to vote, but it's helpful to me just to know where people stand for those who want to vote. Between those who agreed with my decision to vote no on the offensive aid and those who disagreed, how many people here agreed with my vote on it? How many people disagreed with it? That's a interesting, I mean, obviously that's similar to the emails and phone calls we've gotten in, but you know, the opinion is pretty consistent with what our district has written in questions. But look, I appreciate your concern on human rights, especially after the killing of the World Kitchen aid workers. The reality is that the the restrictions are still far too draconian of allowing humanitarian aid in.
Pretty sure
The
we had like a
president has asked time and again that they make the review process less arbitrary. Netanyahu hasn't agreed. They're restricting things such as generators from going in, which are needed, power supplies, and it's not just the food and medicine. Yes, they opened up Erez, but there's still many more land crossings that they need to open up. There's still more they need to do to allow the review process not to be as delayed. And ultimately, they have to stop the bombing, or the aid can't be delivered. And they have to recognize UNRWA is still the best vehicle within Gaza to be delivering that aid. So a lot needs to be done, and that's one of the reasons I didn't want to support further offensive weapons, is that to make it clear to Netanyahu that he needs to bring this war to an end, with a, of course, call for a release of the hostages at the same time, and recognizing that Hamas needs to release the hostages. And in terms of the human rights situation, the Leahy law is on the books, and we should be enforcing that, which is to say any country that gets our aid has to comply with the Leahy law, and my understanding is that Secretary Blinken will be making an announcement about our enforcing that, but that has to be enforced in a way that is applicable to Gaza. The most urgent thing, though, is to try to get the war to end, so more women and children don't die, and so that we don't have a famine.
Hey, Ro, I'm with Nahid from Fremont. She has a question on recent legislative developments on the Hill in relation to Gaza.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you for the ceasefire vote that you made, and really appreciate that. But also my question would be is for the new statement resolution that just passed a couple days, or maybe a couple days ago, regarding the statement from the river to the sea. I just wanted to hear your opinion, and why did you feel that this is something you can vote for?
No, I appreciate that. And I want to make sure that people who disagreed with my vote on the Israel aid also get a chance to speak. So if we can make sure that if someone has that view, that they're expedited in asking questions, just because we've had a few people who have been pro the vote, so I want to just be balanced. The vote that I did that said that I disapproved of River to the Sea. This was a vote on Tuesday before the vote on the foreign aid bill and aid to Israel. And the reason I voted that way is for many Jewish Americans, many people who are Jewish, that the slogan "River to the Sea" connotates that there is not an Israel as a Jewish state. Now I understand that for many Palestinians and for many Palestinian Americans, the slogan "River to the Sea" is about freedom and equality, and they don't intend it in that way. But I don't think that if one group of people is hearing something in a way that is coming across that it means no right for Israel to exist, that language is one that is constructive to peace. I have always believed in a two-state solution with the self-determination of the Jewish people to have Israel as a democratic Jewish state and the end of occupation and a Palestinian state. So I would not vote to criminalize or to have the state sanction that phrase, because that, I believe, is a violation of the First Amendment. But personally, I voted to disapprove of it, because I don't think it is helpful in a context where we've seen a rise of Islamophobia and a rise of anti-Semitism to be having that phrase used when it signals to so many Jewish Americans a sense that Israel should not exist, and that's why I voted in that.
Congressman, I have Raj from Fremont who has a question about civic literacy.
Hi, Congressman. I'm a 39-year-old with zero understanding of how Congress works. How can I get a primer on how Congress works, including committees and what groups of people have what mandate to do what?
The Congress doesn't work. No, I'm just kidding. It works this way for Ukraine, and I think it's wonderful that you're interested, and passionate about it, and wonderful that you're doing that in your 30s, because it's never too late or too early to become civically engaged, and you're showing up to this town hall as a first step in that direction. I think we need to have more classes, frankly, for citizenship across the country and in our district. And, you know, we really should be doing that in terms of the kind of dialogue. In terms of what you can do specifically, I mean, someone on my staff would be happy to meet with you. If you come to the Capitol, I will meet with you about it in the district, you know, and they can give you a basic overview of what Congress does and how it works. I think coming to town halls, going to the city council meetings is a great way of getting engaged, you know, going to school board meetings. I think those are more contentious than congressional hearings. And that, you know, going to some of those things, and you'll see that, you know, how democracy in action works. Let's give him a round of applause for showing up for time.
Congratulations. We have Henry from Santa Clara on taxes.
Right, and I do want to make sure if someone has a more pro-Israel perspective, to make sure we expedite them so that they have an opportunity to speak. Go ahead.
So last month, in Cupertino, in your town hall meeting, you made a little bit of a deal about bringing back $15 million into our district, roughly $20 a person. Our federal budget last year was about $5,000 a person. And my understanding is that the national debt right now is about $100,000 a person. I'm curious what you're doing to get more money, doing to have more of my money stay with me and not having my kids have to pay off all these programs.
Well, I appreciate it. The $15 million was just in Cupertino, but of course we brought back much more money for the district, not just in terms of the district projects that we've passed through community projects of Fremont and Cupertino, but the American Rescue Plan, if you ask city governments, brought back billions of dollars to the district in terms of being able to deal with community health centers and to be able to deal with schools and in the pandemic. And the Inflation Reduction Act is bringing billions of dollars in terms of solar and wind. And the CHIPS and Science Act is directly funding Intel in the district to build more semiconductor manufacturers. So we may, I'm not saying everyone agrees or disagrees with the funding, and certainly it wasn't all me who did that. The one CHIPS and Science, that was my bill with Senator Schumer and Todd Young. But California, and specifically this district, has benefited enormously from these programs in terms of the dollars back to our area. Now, it is true that California pays more taxes than we receive back as a state, but I believe that we want to have everyone have opportunity in this country, and if that means funding schools and childcare and teachers in every part of America, that's our obligation as citizens. You know, I was in Warrensburg, South Carolina, and they told me about a teacher who was at one of the schools who was teaching 5 classes of social studies at the same time. 5 classes, going from one class for 10 minutes to another class because of the shortage of funding in that school. And you know what? And my tax dollars are going so that every kid can have basic education in this country. I don't mind paying that. I believe we have an obligation as citizens first to America to make sure every person has health care, every person has education, every person has child care in this country. And when I vote, I consider, of course, my district, but I think first about what is our responsibility to our country. And on the deficits, I agree with you. But 55% of the budget is going to defense. Why are we spending over $1 trillion on the Pentagon? Let's cut that. Why are we massive tax cuts still in place for the very, very wealthy? For the Trump tax cuts, the George Bush W tax cuts? Let's reverse that. Why do we have so many corporations not paying tax? Let's tax them. Why do we have inheritance that is going without tax? Because people are getting a step up in basis. Let's tax that. So it's not that the Democratic Party doesn't have answers to the deficit. It's just that our answers to it is not to cut funding for child care, not to cut funding for schools, not to cut funding for education, but cut the bloated Pentagon budget and to have people pay for their tax.
Hey, Ro, I'm with Mojan from Santa Clara, and she has a question on some ongoing legislation on the Hill.
Good evening, Congressman. So earlier you mentioned you support Iranian people in their aspiration for freedom and you're for sanctioning the leader of the regime. Just want to refresh your mind, on Saturday you voted against MASA Act, who would hold the regime of Iran, the leader of the Iran regime, accountable for their terrorist activities and human rights violation. You are systematically voting against any bills that would hold the regime of Iran accountable. You voted no to funds for Iranian terrorism. You voted no for Stop Harboring Iranian Petroleum Act. You voted no to Iran Counterterrorism Act. You voted against the Sanction Relief Review Act, and you voted against the Houthi Aggression Act. As a progressive Democrat, why can't you take a stand against human rights violation, against terrorism, and against those people who commit crimes against humanity? I'm a Democrat, and as your constituent, I'm really disappointed at the way that Democratic Party is handling Iran situation.
I appreciate that. I voted consistent with President Biden's policy because we believe that we have voted for sanctions, by the way, on Iran, and there are votes. A lot of those bills were Republican bills that would have further antagonized Iran into getting into a war in Iran. And I don't believe that the answer to the situation with Iran is to do what the Republicans want. Lindsey Graham is saying blow them off the map. Senator Marsha Blackburn is saying retaliatory strikes. I don't believe there should be another war in the Middle East, and I'm not going to vote in ways that are going to jeopardize American security or American investment in getting into another foolish war. That's what Netanyahu wants. That's what the Republicans want. Trump created this situation because he got rid of the JCPOA. So I'm going to stand up for human rights in Iran, but I am not going to do one thing that commits America into another war in the Middle East.
I have Ms. here from Fremont who has a comment for you and a follow-up question on AI.
Hey, Congressman, thank you so much for your work. As I mentioned to you in the other public meeting, who needs AOC and Elon Moore, we have a more balanced, progressive voice here. So thank you so much for standing up for the right voices. But having said that, I have been a lifelong left-leaning voter in India and even since I moved to US in mid-90s. Now, this is the first time I plan to vote for a Republican for the president of the country. Okay, doesn't that scare all the spineless politicians in the Democratic Party? I mean, some of them are sitting here in this room, and they know that I'm going to vote against them. Because you guys stand for certain values. And we have been voting consistently for you guys, thinking that you will stand up for values. And for the past 6 months, I've been asking the same question. I don't care about Hamas, Iran, Israel. So many children are dying, and I don't hear the voices. I mean, very few, 38 voices, man. I mean, we need something more. Stop killing of children. Go and kill adults as many as you want. But I cry almost twice a week, man. I mean, for how long? We are all parents. How are we supposed to answer our children? Basic human dignity. Come on, guys. So that was my thank you note and a warning to the Democrats. Please. And on the AI thing, hey, please give some color on what kind of regulations you guys are working on AI. I mean, I'm a little worried about the job losses, specifically for the kids who are in the Silicon Valley prepping for, most of the Indian Chinese kids, you ask in your constituency, they are like, okay, we want to be tech guys. Now, if AI is taking away all the jobs and the kind of things that are happening, what is Congress doing in order to regulate the encroachment of AI in various industries? Is there any kind of regulation plans? So if you have any color on that, thank you.
I appreciate your passion on Gaza and share the concerns about the women and the children dying, and that's why I tried to be a very strong voice on call for a permanent ceasefire and release of the hostages. That's why I took the vote I did on not providing further offensive weapons to Netanyahu. That's why I have questioned Secretary Austin about what we're going to do to actually get this war to stop and the bombing to stop. And I will continue to be that voice. And I believe that somehow in this country we have to figure out how we talk to each other about this situation. I mean, what's happening across this country in Columbia, at Yale, where it seemed like we've lost the ability to have even a conversation, where student protesters are being arrested on the one hand. On the other hand, there's genuine fear among Jewish students for their safety. And the question is, how do we move forward? To not look at just hurling insults, but to figure out how do we get to an end to the war? How do we get to an end to the occupation? How do we get 2 states? How do we have a regional security framework in the Middle East with Iran, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Egypt, that recognizes that neither Israel or Iran are going to succeed in blowing up the other nation, and that we have to have peace and security? We need new thinking in Washington. We need a new vision, the type that Obama was trying to offer, not to have the same framework of a status quo politics that simply labels the other side as wrong and unwilling to understand the complexity of those narratives. And I have hope for the next generation of politics. I have hope that they will do something better than the current status quo. In terms of AI, we have to prepare for AI. We have to make sure that we're using it in a way that is beneficial in medicine, in education, in industrialization, but that we're also preparing young people, as I know people here at community colleges are doing and schools are doing, to have the capacity to understand technology so that they will have the high-paying jobs of the future. And we have to do that not just in our district, but around the country. Oh, yes. Someone asked, what is the JCPOA? The JCPOA is the deal that President Obama had reached with Iran to say that we were going to provide Iran with a path to getting back into the community of the nations if they did not develop their nuclear weapons. Trump came in and he said that Iran is cheating, we're going to have a maximum pressure campaign, and we're not going to have the JCPOA, so there were no inspections, and today Iran is very, very close to a nuclear bomb. The Republicans argue that Obama should never have made the deal, but the reality is today, Iran with the maximum pressure campaign is closer to a nuclear bomb than they ever were. My own view is that President Obama was right, but I believe that about most things, so I'm biased.
We have Kishan from Fremont on education.
Thank you, Congressman. My name is Kishan Naik, and I'm a student here at Enlighten College.
Right.
I'm also going to be the president of the student body.
Congratulations.
My question is on education and affordability in education. So what future plans do you have towards education and higher education and making it more affordable, not just for people here, but for people around the country?
Hey, Sean, thank you for your leadership. Congratulations on being student body president. Lyndon Johnson once said his hardest election was student body president. And I never won for student council when I was trying. So I appreciate that. Look, I think we have to make public college and community college free in America. I don't understand how we have people graduate with $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in debt. I graduated with $100,000 in debt. What other country makes you do that? To get an education, we're talking about AI. I'll tell you one thing with AI, people should get as much education in whatever they want as much as they can. If that means a vocational education to be a great welder, great. If that means a PhD, great. We should encourage education of all kinds, vocational or college, and make that free, make that investment. That's what's going to make us a stronger nation. And we have the wealth to do it. You know how I know? Because I was at NVIDIA this morning. And I was. We got $10 trillion in my district. $10 trillion. Apple, Google, NVIDIA, Tesla. You're telling me we can't afford to educate all our kids? So it's a matter of values, not of resources. And I'm going to continue to fight both for preschool education, for childcare, for higher education, to make an investment in the human capital of our young people.
Hi, Congressman. I'm with Mary from Fremont, and she has a question in relation to the climate and the environment.
I do want to make one more point before that, because I do want to make sure, I try to be very fair in my town halls, and if there are any people who disagreed with my vote on Israel or want to have that perspective, I just want to make sure they're heard. So please just see hip or anyone if you do want to speak up. Go ahead.
No. Oh, right now?
Just let them know, and then after, let's get this gentleman too.
Hi, my name is Mary, and I'm from a volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby, and I'm actually from Milpitas. I'm a constituent.
Yes.
And first of all, I want to thank you, Congressman Khanna, for all your efforts in energy and environment. And in particular, in this year, you've requested community project funding of $3 million for the city of Fremont to be used for a project along the Automall Parkway. So I want to thank you for that. For many times you've gotten funds from different municipalities. So my question today is about the carbon tax. There's a bill that was passed, that was in the House, introduced in the House by Representative Kabaha, and it's the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. It's HR 5744. And I want to ask if you would co-sponsor and support such a bill. There are basically three components to this bill. The bill charges corporate polluters a fee for the carbon pollution they put into our air. And this is a fee on fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas at the source. The second part is the money collected from the polluter fee goes to Americans in the form of a monthly carbon cashback payment and will help low and middle income Americans. The third component is that it protects U.S. manufacturers and jobs. Imported goods such as imported fossil fuels and carbon-intensive goods will pay a border carbon adjustment fee, and exported goods and fossil fuels will receive a refund. So this will ensure competitiveness of American manufacturing and creates an incentive for all nations to price carbon. So this policy, we believe is critical to hitting our climate targets of 50% carbon reductions by 2030 and net zero by 2050. So we're hoping that you would co-sponsor this bill.
I will take a very strong look at it. I salute Carbo as a good friend. He has a very thoughtful policy and principle. I'm for a carbon fee and dividend to the American people as long as it doesn't lessen environmental standards. My understanding is this bill has made improvements, so it doesn't. So I will take a look at it, and I appreciate your advocacy, and we'll get back to you when I'm back in Congress and have had a chance to read the bill.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Congressman. I'm with Brian. And he has a question in relation to the subject you just brought up, the military base in Gaza.
Thank you.
Yes, I served in the U.S. Army infantry from 69 to 72.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah. I was trained as a light weapons infantry platoon leader, and I know for a fact that guerrillas and terrorists use the tactic of planting their resources in schools, hospitals, residential districts, so they're virtually immune from attack. And the strategic goal of doing that is to make your opponent look like a barbarian and a terrorist in the world's eyes. And that's exactly what's taking place in Gaza, I believe. I haven't been there. All I have is news reports to form that opinion. But anybody who thinks that the Israeli people are willfully and willingly doing what they're doing is sadly misinformed. The Israeli state was formed after World War II, after 6 million Jews were killed in Europe by the Nazis, and it was supposed to be a protection for the Jewish people going forward. Unfortunately, the way the state was formed and the ill will that was generated surrounding Israel has grown and manifested itself in various horrible ways over time. And I've spoken to some soldiers and businessmen who are from Israel, and they think that our point of view is very misinformed and too lightweight for the reality of the world they live in. They're surrounded by people that hate them and want to kill them and put their state out of existence. And they are, the strategy I saw taking place here is some bait was placed, i.e. hostages and killings were taken, and that provoked the Israeli state into an attack on Gaza, and that has put Israel in a bad light ever since they made their first move. A question? Okay. Given that point of view, I understand your votes, but the point of view I'm presenting is a more on-the-ground tactical point of view, because that's what I have to work with. And is there any possibility of incorporating views like mine that are more realistic and less abstract and more realistic into U.S. policy?
Well, I appreciate, first of all, your service to our country. I appreciate you speaking out, and appreciate, again, the tenor of our conversation in town hall, where people of different views can have this exchange thoughtfully and civilly without shouting each other down. I have no doubt, I believe I've called Hamas a terrorist organization. I voted numerous times to condemn unequivocally the October 7th attack. I have no doubt that Hamas is hiding military equipment in hospitals and in community centers. But one can have that view and still have a view that the way Netanyahu has been prosecuting this war has led to unnecessary and unjustified loss of life for women and children. The president himself has said that the bombing has been indiscriminate. It's a violation of international law to be bombing refugee camps and hospitals, even if Hamas may have had a military presence there. And even when you look at the destruction of the Hamas capability, which has happened to a large extent, the idea now that they would go into Rafah to try to eliminate Hamas, I don't think that you're going to be able to eliminate Hamas. You're just going to create a new generation of people who will be terrorists. So, you know, my view of it is not in any way thinking that the situation in Israel that Israel faces isn't difficult or complex, or that Hamas isn't engaged in tactics that have been awful. But the question is, what is going to bring peace? What is going to end the suffering of innocent loss of life? And what is going to ultimately bring some settlement of two states? And I don't think that Netanyahu, who has been empowered by the far right, that continuing to arm him is going to achieve that. I think it's just going to mean more innocent deaths in Gaza and ultimately breed more terrorism that makes our world less secure. So I understand the complexity that you're pointing out, but my view is that Netanyahu has gone too far in the prosecution of the war.
Forget the mic.
for running. Unfortunately, we got a really tight schedule today, so we've got one more question from each person. Go from there.
Okay, Congressman, I have David from San Jose who has a question about Forum 8.
So first of all, thank you, Congressman, for being here. Really appreciate you being here to listen to our opinions. And my name is David. I'm a high schooler from San Jose. And I know that recently you've been opposed to the military spending that the U.S. has given to Israel, but there's a distinction between military spending and foreign aid. Military spending is one of the largest items on the federal budget, but less than 1% of the U.S. budget goes to foreign aid. And given that millions of people around the world are living in poverty and need our help, do you support more U.S. foreign aid to help those in need, and why or why not?
Great question. We do support more U.S. foreign aid. I think we have to help people in Sudan, in Haiti, in Gaza, because providing a small amount of dollars and being part of the international community can avert famine, can create recognizing and improving and standing up for the dignity of human life, and bolsters America as the leader of the free world and championing our human rights values. So I don't have the view, and I don't say this to mischaracterize her, but if you listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene or some of the Freedom Caucus, their view is America should only care about America. I think America should lead in the world and care about the world. And I certainly believe that our aid, where it can make a difference, should, within reason. And you're right to point out that it's less than 1%, and even there, most of it, unfortunately, is military funding. And we should do a lot more to help humanitarian funding. I'd rather America be known for the humanitarian aid we're providing rather than the bombs we're providing.
Congressman, we have Java from Fremont on the university campus.
Hi, Lo. The question I had was what's going on across the campuses.
Who will let you answer this? I thought I was going to duck without answering this. I'm just cutting around.
Yeah, I'm passionate about universities. So, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, how come so many lines are being crossed and law and order is not? It's like there's so much shouting and stuff. People can't even concentrate, right?
No, it's a very, very difficult situation, and I've been struggling in how to address it. Because on the one hand, you have young people, passionate students, who are seeing what's going on in Gaza and who want to speak out. And, they can't get members of Congress often to listen to them, and they can't get the White House to listen to them. So this is the only way they feel they can have their voices heard. And they're engaged in protest of, which is their right as citizens of this country to speak out. On the other hand, you've had both Jewish students and Muslim students in schools, in campuses, by the way, including in our district, feel unsafe, feel harassed, feel like they cannot have their voice heard. And that's unacceptable. That's unacceptable in a school or in a college environment. One can criticize Netanyahu, and one can criticize me or our president, but you can't be yelling to kill people because of a certain faith. You can't be yelling slurs that are anti-Semitic or Islamophobic. And we've got to get to a point in this country where we can recognize speech, but also recognize that just because some speech is protected doesn't mean that it's always constructive. Just because you can yell and shout doesn't mean that that's what's going to do the best to bring peace. I, of course, am inspired by my grandfather, and people have heard me tell the story of how he spent years in jail as part of India's independence movement and influenced by Gandhi's vision of Satyagraha. And I'm not saying that any of us can live up to Gandhi or King, but Gandhi, when he was dealing with British colonizers, famously would build make the shoes and sandals for the people who were oppressing him, because he thought that the way to win people over was to win their hearts. There's a time for anger in this country. There's a time for being morally appalled at what's going on, and I don't begrudge young people their voice, and I certainly think that they need to be treated in respect of their First Amendment. But the question we have to ask as a country is, how are we going to speak to each other and have dialogue where we listen to each other and listen that there are complex narratives in the Middle East with claims and narratives that run deep on both sides to try to bring peace. We've got a lot of people who are passionate, and what my hope is that I can help to the extent I can as one member of Congress from this district, interject some call for dialogue, for civility. I was thinking of doing it in my district instead of having me go to events on anti-Semitism and events with the Jewish community, and then go somewhere else with events with the Muslim American community and events with Ramadan, to bring them together, to have a conversation together, and to try to see if there could be some way forward to model a different type of conversation than the difficulty we're seeing on college campuses. But I don't have the answers. I just know that we need a healthier respect and empathy on both sides if we're going to hope to play a role as a peacemaker in the world.
Just a quick one. But for example, in Colombia, why don't we just let them protest in the, let's say, the Central Park or somewhere? Why do they have to live on the campus and disrupt regular studies? I mean, wouldn't that be a very decent solution?
Well, I don't know all the details of every campus. What I would say is that they have to figure out a way of balancing free speech while also clearly condemning anything that crosses the line and is anti-Semitic or Islamophobic. And this is a difficult debate because you can't define just criticism of Netanyahu or criticism of the Israeli government as anti-Semitic. On the other hand, on the other extreme, you can't say that someone hurling insults and saying kill people because they're Jewish is acceptable on a college campus. And so how you balance that, I think, is a huge challenge. But what I would say is that it's going to require more than getting the balance right of where they have free speech and where we need to have both Jewish students, Muslim students, all people of all faiths feel safe on college campuses. It's also going to require leadership at these college campuses of getting groups who aren't talking to each other to start to talk to each other and figuring out how we have an effort at that dialogue. But it's very raw. It's a very, very raw situation for many people who are young and Palestinian American, Muslim American, Arab American. They see thousands of people dying in Gaza, and they say, how can we think of anything else? This is what we're doing is trying to stop the war. And for many students who are Jewish and families who are Jewish, they genuinely feel that this is something that evokes feelings of what happened during the Holocaust, and that they feel afraid. They feel afraid to live in America, and they feel that they're not being safe in where they're going. And we can either just have a country where we disparage the other perspective and say, well, they don't get us, or we can try to empathize and understand where people are coming from and try to have a dialogue. I'm for the latter approach, and I think our district represents the latter approach, and that's what I try to take into politics.
Hey, Ro, I'm with Pat Jacques from Fremont, and she has a question on Hinduphobia.
Yes.
Thank you, Ro, for allowing me to talk.
Of course.
Okay. We are facing so many problems here already about Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and sorry to add another phobic issue here, which is like Hindu-phobic and Hindu-phobic culture these days. Like, whoever has like any problem, now they blame Hindus. If somebody wants a separate country, go, break temples, vandalize temples. So they say, hey, why are you, vandalizing our temples? It's like, oh, because we want this. If you break your temples, you will go tell, somebody, and then they will hear us, like what we need, like they're just using. And I appreciate that you wrote a letter to Department of Justice to get a report on why it is happening, how and who is responsible, whatever. I would like to know what you heard so far. And coming to the same point, Hindu-phobic culture is going to the textbooks in the school, and kids are feeling very uncomfortable in the textbooks. They're not writing the history, in the AP world history, they are writing their opinions that, Hindu vigilante groups are targeting minorities in India. That is not true. And I kept talking to the school to change the vague content. What do you mean targeting minorities, like that, but nobody is like listening, because there is no statement from policymakers like you that Hindu phobia exists, that it needs to be looked into. So I really request you to take a strong stance to listen to the Hindu phobic problems, and then save the future children so they don't feel uncomfortable, and then they don't feel humiliated in the schools. Just like how anti-Semitism and Islamophobia develop, please don't allow Hindu-phobia to grow any further.
Well, I appreciate, Pandita, you speaking out and answer your question. I often joke with my colleagues that I have the only town halls where the questions about the price of gas, price of milk, price of rent doesn't come up, but every global problem comes up. So it's an insight into our wonderfully diverse district. But of course, as someone of Hindu faith, as one of two people of Hindu faith in Congress, I have always been proud of my heritage, proud of my faith, proud of this district, that when I ran for Congress, people called me all sorts of names and hurled all kinds of insults. But my experience in this district, just my experience, I'm not saying is that other discrimination doesn't exist. My experience was that very few people in this district ever made an issue of my being Hindu or Indian. In this district, at least, I was given a very fair shot. And I also felt that growing up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, because I think at heart this country is a pluralistic country. But we need to speak out, and I did when I read about the vandalism of the temples, completely unjustified. We will be getting a report on that. But let me maybe end with, do we have any other questions, or is this the last one? So maybe end with this point, is that, people, I think, often mistake the Bay Area as just a place of secularism with tech and a lot of wealth, and they say, oh, this is the West Coast. They don't understand faith. And I say, you haven't really been to my district, because in my district we have very, very active temples and mosques and churches and synagogues. Milpitas, they call the Holy City. There's so many folks who go to different religious institutions. And I think that there is often a discrimination, of course, against minority faiths, and I don't deny that people who are Jewish facing anti-Semitism, Hindus facing discrimination, people of Islamic faith facing discrimination. But I've also heard from people who are Christian, face that they don't feel they can't bring their faith into public conversation. And I think what we have to do in this district is figure out, how do we respect faith? How do we respect people's faith participating in the public process, but also insist that there be a respect for pluralism, a respect for all the different diversity of faiths that exist. And our district is a model for that. It's a model for that kind of diversity of people who are Jewish and Muslim and Hindu and Christian interacting and respecting each other. And I always will be a voice for to that kind of pluralism that I do believe makes America exceptional at its best, and why I think our nation is a model at its best for that kind of pluralism and a cohesive multiculturalism. So I appreciate in the town hall that difficult questions for those of you who were either shy to challenge me or wanted to pursue the conversation further. Please reach out to him for others and write to me, and we will engage in a dialogue. I know these are difficult issues, and that people may disagree with my votes here, and I know some agree, many agree, but I want to be